just thinking, we think it was a construction guy that was down the street doing.
It wasn't long to me.
plumbing work.
It should have been about a 30-minute deal, and we turned it into
But if you buy a
2.5
TV,
hours.
get your serial number down.
And
It doesn't-
plus
you know, the
material
warranty cards, they don't
costs.
print it on them anymore, so I didn't have the warranty. We were just, anyway, I don't know if that would have helped. Boy, I just never had that happen my whole life.
You guys don't have a signal in the middle. I don't either. We got one, so I guess we'll start. Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of February 2nd, 2015. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I get my choice, I guess.
You get double.
I guess so. It makes two. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor of or opposition to the item. Please spell your name for us. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearing, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meeting of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date nor plan for a future agenda, and this is not one of those days. Will the clerk please call the first item?
First will be the Mayor's Award of Excellence.
Good afternoon, members of the council. It's my privilege to once again present the Mayor's Award of Excellence, this time for the month of December. It's being presented to Investigator David Wiggins, Jr. with the Technical Investigations Unit of our Police Department. Wiggins has been a Lincoln police officer for about 7 years now. He was nominated by Sergeant Sandra Myers in the categories of customer relations and productivity. Wiggins' job duties include investigating forgeries and embezzlements and frauds and identity thefts and a variety of other financial crimes. He was nominated for his work in solving 2 different cases involving counterfeit checks and credit card fraud within the last year. Both cases involved groups operating throughout the Midwest. The first case began in December of 2012 when LPD began to notice mail theft combined with the manufacturing of counterfeit checks, which were used at local discount stores. Further investigation showed the checks with the illegally obtained information of Lincoln victims were being passed in Des Moines, Sioux City along the interstate and in Colorado. A fictitious Colorado name and address were usually printed on the checks. Wiggins began working on the case in June of 2014 after seeing even more cases of missing mail and subsequently related counterfeit checks. He identified 6 suspects in Colorado who were passing checks in more than 100 communities in 8 surrounding states. He began working with all the jurisdictions to compile information and build a case, identified more than 60 forgeries in Lincoln, totaling $25,000 in losses in Nebraska. They passed an additional 240 forged checks with the loss to businesses totaling more than $80,000. Many of the victims then had to deal with identity theft issues, including trying to clear their credit histories. Wiggins established the underlying facts for the case and communicated those facts to the federal agencies with whom he worked, and presently federal indictments for mail theft, identity theft, and forgery are all now imminent. The estimated total loss in all the states involved was more than $250,000. The second case involved credit card fraud as opposed to forged checks, and began when a person in Illinois called LPD to report that a credit card was used in the Lincoln area without their authorization, and the thief still had the credit card that was being used. Wiggins obtained video and sales receipts. Then the case began snowballing when several stores noticed that the same people who had used the original victim's credit card were using other credit cards for purchases at different times. They also were using cards at stores in neighboring states. Again, Wiggins worked with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, as well as loan prevention officers at many of the victimized stores. He identified one of the individuals using facial recognition software, and other associates were identified thereafter. As of September, the investigation uncovered more than $40,000 in transactions in the Lincoln and Omaha area between March and August of last year. A group of about 10 people used the credit card numbers of more than 70 victims. Myers wrote that Wiggins' dedication to his job and his continual dogged persistence resulted in the discovery that the check fraud cases that I described to you and the credit card cases happened to be related and were committed by the same group of people. So he put it all together in the end. Both cases began with a fairly simple investigation and then multiplied into multi-jurisdictional operations. It was not until he brought the jurisdictions together that the magnitude of the crimes by one group was realized. Myers wrote, it was because of Dave's hard work and determination to bring some closure to the victims that both of these cases are now going to be prosecuted federally. So it's my pleasure today to present to you and to investigator David Wiggins to present him with the Mayor's Award of Excellence for December. So please join me in congratulating him. David, come on up. I think Chief Brian Jackson is here today and wishes to say a few words.
Assistant Chief Brian Jackson, I'm here in place of Chief Pashong, who's unable to make it today. It's always an honor to come and have one of our staff be recognized by the mayor, presented to the council for the work that they've done. I've often said that we don't say good job enough to our staff, and unfortunately that's because of the quality and type of work they do day in and day out. And excellent work tends to become just good work. And it's sometimes when it's submitted and compared with others that it's truly recognized as exceptional. And this case is one of those incidents. And we are greatly appreciative of the effort you've done, and you give us day in and day out. I think it's truly an example of the synergy that it's created with working with others, partnering with others, whether it's within our own community or the communities around us and the jurisdictions that have a mission to make their community safe. You've taken a big step along those lines. You've assisted Lincoln in solving these crimes, and for life of me, I don't know why these groups come to Lincoln, because we catch them all the time. And I'm hoping that they're watching this today and maybe they'll learn a lesson and not come back. But when we have investigators like Dave, we're in safe hands. Congratulations.
I appreciate the recognition, but there's a lot of people that helped me out with this case, investigators within LPD, and a lot of other jurisdictions in and outside of Nebraska, and wouldn't be able to clear these types of cases without a lot of help and cooperation. Thank you.
Do you want to introduce, do you have family here?
Yeah. That's my wife. This is my wife Tiffany back here, and my daughter Reagan. My son is a little sick, so he couldn't make it today. So,
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave, thank you very much for what you do for the city. I know there are several police and fire and people back there, so thank you. We don't say it enough either. Thank you for what you do. Let's go. First item, please.
All right, first will be our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 11.
Anybody who would like to speak to these items? item, please.
If not, we can vote on these items. Items 1 through 5 were introduced by Cook.
So moved. Seconded by John. Discussion. Call a roll.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 7 was introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call a roll.
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next would be our liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. Applicants or witnesses are not required to stay for the voting session. I'll call items 12 and 13 together. They are the application of Florio's Italian Restaurant and Grill for a Class I liquor license at 7300 South 13th Street and the related manager application of Florim Ramadani.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? I see you coming. I apologize.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
State your name for us, please, and your address.
Name is Florim Ramadani. The address is 5011 Starling Drive.
Okay. Is that spelling correct, Mr. Ramadani? We want to make sure we have it right in the book, so.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, very good. Any questions? John?
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing there at Florio's?
Well, we used to be in southeast Lincoln, and the building got sold. Bank sold the building, so we decided to move to southwest, which the correct address there is 7300 South 13th Street, and it'll be a restaurant with there's about 130 seats. And we specialize in Italian food, steaks, seafood, pastas, and lots of wine, if we get our liquor license.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next, I'll call item 14, application of Hy-Vee Food Store to delete an area measuring approximately 159 feet by 56 feet in the southwest corner of its Class C liquor license at 5020 North 27th Street. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Parker, 2637 West Washington Street, Lincoln. I am your store director at the North 27th Hy-Vee.
So can you tell us a little about what you're asking for?
Our store is going through a major remodel. As we come out of that remodel, one of the parts of our store that will be new will be the Market Cafe. Will be a full-service restaurant featuring beer, wine, as well as spirits. Kind of a little bit of a mix between, I don't know, point of reference for Lincoln might be a Lazzalo's and a Granite City in your Hy-Vee food store. Be deleting our existing or our old license and space in lieu of this new space that we'll be having. So.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, John.
Is the new space a separate building or built on? or-
No, it's a totally remodeled space, so it will be a completely new area, remodeled, but completely new to the store.
You guys have kind of been doing that by sectioning off different pieces of the store and working on those pieces. I'm sure you're.
Been there.
Yes, I have. I'm sure you'll be glad to have it
I appreciate
open
your
in its
patience.
entire. No, you guys have done terrific. It's got to be really, really difficult to try to remodel while you have people inside your store. So
It is. It's challenging, but honestly, we've got some great customers that came from the old store at 14th Superior, moved up, been with us ever since. So a lot of patience, a lot of understanding.
Thank
And
you.
it opens March 5th, so I hope to see you all
Awesome.
there.
Good.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Roy.
To your knowledge, is Hy-Vee expecting to do this kind of remodel in other sections of the city, at other Hy-Vees in Lincoln?
Yes, it is. It's a format going forward. All of our new Hy-Vees that we build will all have this as a feature or amenity within it, and then those that will be going back. So the 4 other stores in Lincoln over the course of the next couple of years will all be moving to this feature.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Realizing that I didn't give anybody who might have wanted to speak on the Florios, anybody who would like to speak to either of these items, please feel free to come forward. Staff questions? Next item, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of items 12, 13, and 14.
Second.
Second by
Trent? Discussion? Call a roll.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next are our public hearing resolutions. Item 15, accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of January 1st through the 15th, 2015.
Anybody who'd like to speak to a claim? Next item, please.
All right, next I'll call items 16, 17, and 18. They are approving an amendment to the 2014-2020 CIP to move projects into the first year of the CIP and to change the funding source to local option sales tax for public safety for Project 0765 radio system upgrade, Project 0240 and 0348 for the co-location of Fire Station 12 with an LPD precinct, Project 0172 new Fire Station 15, Project 0204 Fire Station 10 relocation, and Project 0662 new Fire Station 16. Item 17 is the interlocal agreement between the city and the county relating to the joint planning and financing of a replacement emergency communications system. And item 18 is directing submittal to the qualified electors of the city of a proposed ballot question for the April 7, 2015 primary election to increase the local sales tax rate by 1/4% for a 3-year period to be used for the city's public safety communications system, including 911 public safety radio communication system equipment and infrastructure, replacements and upgrades, a joint police, fire, and rescue station, and 3 fire and rescue stations.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Cassidy. I'm the Public Safety Director for Lincoln, and I'd like to address you about these proposals. We are hopeful that the City Council will consider 2 very high priority public safety projects here today contained in these 3 items. The first of which is the replacement of our aging 911 radio system. Now, the 911 system is composed of various components, the personnel, of course, the facility, the software for computer-aided dispatch, the telephone system, and ultimately the radio system by which our 911 dispatchers communicate with public safety officers and firefighters in the field, and also the way in which they communicate with one another. And that's the portion that this proposal is meant to replace. It's the radio system itself. The second portion of this is the optimization of the location of 4 fire stations in order to serve our growing community. And you have before you a proposal to place on the ballot a question that would ask the voters whether they will approve a 1/4-cent sales tax increase for 3 years in order to fund both of these projects. That proposal is the result of a 13-person committee that Mayor Beitler appointed and I chaired that worked during the months of October and November to study ways of financing these projects and to make a determination on whether they felt the projects were worthwhile pursuing. It was an excellent committee. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed working with this group of citizens. They did a phenomenal job in assessing 7 different financing options and in making a unanimous recommendation to move forward with the option of a 1/4-cent sales tax. I appreciate the fact that 2 city council members, Mr. Camp and Mr. Emery, were willing to serve on that committee. I'd like to first talk about our radio system, the first part of the project. Our 911 radio system dates to 1987. That's the year it was first acquired from General Electric. It's really critical to public safety. It's a very important piece of our infrastructure. It's served us very, very well for the past 27 plus years. But now the technology is obsolete. And in 2017, all vendor support will be ending. Already, however, many of the components of the system cannot be acquired. So we really need to get moving on replacing this system. And again, it's been a very good system, but it's simply that the technology has moved on. The technology was new in the mid-1980s, but like other 1980s technology, things have changed. And it really is time for us to move on from the mid-1980s to the more updated technology. And radio technology for public safety has changed dramatically in recent years. The current technology is a standards-based technology called P25 and should serve us well into the future. The second project that this proposal would seek citizen authorization in order to fund is the relocation of some of our fire stations in order to deal with the growth in the community. This blue polygon on this map represents the city of Lincoln as it existed in 1997. 1997 was the last time we occupied a new fire station here in Lincoln, which was the station in the Highlands, Station 14. And the light gray area is the city limits as it exists today. We've added just over 22 square miles, and also during that time period, we've added 57,000 to our population. And to give you a frame of reference, in both land area and population, that's about the equivalent of the city of Manhattan, Kansas, since we last added a fire station. Since the city has grown considerably, we're having a more and more difficult time meeting our response time goals to life-threatening medical emergencies. This is something that's very important to us. The standard, national standard for urban fire and rescue services is 4 minutes travel time to life-threatening emergencies. And the reason for that 4-minute standard is that's about the time that your brain can go without oxygen before you start to experience brain damage and ultimately brain death. We have just under 90,000 addresses in the city of Lincoln, represented here by yellow dots. Obviously, in the populated areas of the city, those dots are so numerous that it almost looks like an area instead of individual dots. But of those 90,000 addresses, not all are within 4 minutes from the nearest fire station. In fact, there are just under 10,000 addresses in Lincoln that are more than 4 minutes from the nearest fire station. When last I checked, it was 9,954. But that number changes virtually every day as new building permits are pulled and new addresses pop up on the fringes of the city. These yellow dots that are beyond 4 minutes from a fire station are pretty indicative of where growth is happening in Lincoln. And we have some areas of particular concern in far north Lincoln along North 27th and also in southeast Lincoln. If you think about the area that's out around the St. Michael's Parish, the Menards and Walmart, on Andermatt, Nebraska Heart Hospital, those areas are well beyond 4 minutes from the closest fire station. And we're increasingly vulnerable in these high growth areas at the fringe of the city because of the distance. We are now annexing land all the way south to 84th Street and Rokeby Road, and that area is about 12 to 13 minutes away from the nearest fire station. So it really is becoming a critical need. We devised a plan back in 2011 to spread out our resources by relocating into 4 newly built fire stations. We would move existing personnel and apparatus to those stations, closing 2 of our other stations, and decoupling 2 stations that presently house 2 fire companies so that we'd be able to staff those stations with the existing personnel and apparatus. We used our GIS technology and our database of historical calls for service and also the comprehensive plan, 25-year projected growth area, to model what would happen if we were to make this move. And what we found is that by implementing this plan, we can dramatically reduce the number of addresses that are beyond 4 minutes from a fire station. So if you'll watch the screen, you'll see what happens with that plan. A dramatic reduction. It takes us 6,500 addresses in Lincoln and puts them within our reach in 4 minutes. We think it represents a very good way to use our limited resources to deal with the growth that's occurred in Lincoln. And I'm very hopeful that you will agree with us and help us put this question to the voters. One of the 4 stations that we're proposing will be a joint police and fire station, which will eliminate the travel time problems we experience. Right now, that blue line represents the direction and the distance that our officers in Southeast Lincoln travel from police headquarters next door out to their beat at the beginning of their shift. And we think it's high time that we resolve that problem as well with the station, similar to the 2 other stations that we have at 27th and Holdridge and 49th and Huntington. These proposals together ensure that we've got a rapid and reliable 911 emergency response when someone dials 911 in a life-threatening emergency. It helps to protect our police officers and firefighters who depend millions of times every year on the reliability of the radio system. And we also believe that it provides the best value for our taxpayers because we can essentially engage in pay-as-you-go financing as these projects come online in the next 3 years. That was the chief advantage that the committee saw in this financing option, and that's why we have recommended it unanimously to the mayor, and I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions? John?
Thank you, Director Cassidy. Would you also just review for a minute, we did look at 7 alternatives, and by coming with the sales tax approach, maybe you could explain how that also helps us in some respects mitigate the burden on the City of Lincoln people when we have out-of-towners using the system and so forth.
One of the advantages of the sales tax is that everyone who comes to Lincoln and buys goods and services ends up paying into that revenue stream. That includes people who visit our city and also use our emergency services. When we have events here in Lincoln, in fact every day, but certainly on the big days when we have big events, many of the users of our 911 services, police and fire and rescue, are visitors, and many are residents who don't live inside the city limits of Lincoln. So sales tax helps to spread that cost to everyone who uses the services. The chief advantage that we felt that it had was the absence of significant financing costs for borrowing money. Until recently, these projects of this type have always been funded with general obligation bonds, and a general obligation bond of the size necessary for these projects, $34.5 million, would, over the course of a 20-year life, carry financing costs more than $10 million. As opposed to sales tax, where we think we could probably do this without any financing at all. If we need any financing, it'll be very short-term and very minimal financing costs.
And then if I may too, if you'd go through the way you'll be pricing the rental of the radios to cover both current operating and then the sinking fund that you'll be setting aside.
We have about a third of the radios on the system. There are 2,400 radios on the system. And they're primarily police, fire, rural fire, EMS, emergency management. There are about a third of those radios that are non-City of Lincoln users. It's organizations like the University of Nebraska Lincoln Police, the State Patrol's Capitol Security Division, the Airport Authority Police, and a few others. And all of those non-city agencies pay an annual fee to operate their radio on our system, and that fee basically is the operating cost, the annual operating cost. So we've divided the total cost of operating our radio system by the number of radios, and that's what every user pays in that annual fee. Going forward, we're proposing that fee also include a portion of the capital expense of replacing the system. Up to this point, the fee has only included the annual operating and maintenance. But going forward, we're going to ask our non-city users to pay a portion of the capital cost as well as part of that annual fee.
Larry.
Thank you for the excellent presentation, Tom. I think anyone watching could understand that the 911 communications radio system would be of benefit to every single person in the city. they also might be tempted to think that the relocations only benefit some people, that the new people who are coming in on the fringe of the city who would be covered, who currently aren't. But can you speak to how that's not actually the case, how we're really all in this together as a city, that we all stand to benefit from the relocation of these stations and the building of 2 new ones?
One of the things that happens when we have for example, a life-threatening medical emergency. Oh, it's somewhere. There's a senior living center out near Menards and Walmart on Highway 2, and we're sending a medic unit and an engine company probably from Station 6, which is at 48th and Clare Street, and that's a good long ways out Highway 2 for them to respond. And while they're out there, they're not available in their own response area. So what that means is that we're moving resources out to the fringe to handle those calls, leaving other areas of the city uncovered. And it has a domino effect. So if Station 6 is out and they're way outside their ordinary response area at a distant call, then someone else is covering a call that happens in their first response area. And Station 4 moves into that area, leaving their area uncovered. And this shell game happens throughout the day, and we're equipped to deal with that. The problem is when we're traveling long distances and we're getting those resources way out there, and out of position, that puts everyone at risk. So spreading out so that we can deal with the workload that's occurring at 27th and Interstate 180 or at 92nd and Holdridge Street is a good idea for everyone in the community because it helps to ensure the greater reliability of all of our responses.
And while we call these fire stations, they house medic units. And can you talk about the number of calls that are actually responding to medical emergencies?
Yeah. We handle over 16,000 medical emergencies every year at Lincoln Fire and Rescue, and it's about 80% of the total workload of Lincoln Fire and Rescue. And the first responder to medical emergencies is always the closest available company. And usually that's an engine company. So we try to get a paramedic in front of the patient as quickly as we can. We're not as concerned about what kind of vehicle they arrive in. We simply want to get that trained provider there to begin the emergency care. Ambulances, of course, are used primarily for transporting after the emergency care has been delivered and while it's still underway. Ordinarily, the medic unit, the ambulance, is the second unit to arrive, rather. And that's how we operate. And fire departments that run the rescue service operate like this pretty much all over the country. Normally, you have so many more fire companies available than you do medic units that the wisdom of responding with that fire company is simply that you can get the provider, the paramedic, in front of the patient much more quickly that way. So all of these stations are equipped to respond to medical emergencies. They're all staffed with personnel who are the bare minimum EMTs. Most are staffed with 1 or more paramedics. And that's why it does everyone good when we spread this resource out.
Thank you.
Carl.
Okay, thank you. Director Cassidy, part of the plan is that there will be a combined police fire station in far southeast Lincoln. You're a numbers guy, so I'm sure you've probably looked at the numbers in terms of savings of staff time and ultimately dollars with having police officers start and end their shifts in that location rather than coming downtown to do the same.
We've actually done some detailed calculations on that, and we believe in the near term, if we did it today, we'd be saving approximately 1 FTE, the equivalent of 1 full-time police officer, in the time that we spend driving to and from police headquarters at the beginning and end of the shift. That will continue to increase, however, as more annexations take place. That number gets larger every year, and when we eventually build out to where the comprehensive plan envisions Lincoln 25 years from now, that'll amount to about 2 officers.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Tom, can you speak just real quickly to the fact that the discussion ultimately has to be not about whether we need the 911 system, but how do we pay for the 911? I mean, what our options really are very limited.
That's exactly right. Worldwide, of course, police departments and fire and rescue departments operate on private radio networks. It's a critical form of communications regardless of where you are. and ours has to be replaced. If it's not replaced, we're back to functioning the way we did in the 1880s, with call boxes, essentially. Some people think, well, why can't you just use cellular telephones? And I might address that for just a moment. If you've ever been in an area, for example, if you were at the Super Bowl last night, if you were lucky enough to have one of those $9,000 tickets, the chances of you being able to connect with your cell phone are not real good because so much demand is being placed on the sites that are there. We experience this problem in Lincoln sometimes during University of Nebraska home football games. Too many people trying to access the same site, no one gets through. An even bigger problem, however, is that if you have a genuine emergency, something like an ice storm, a tornado, any kind of natural disaster, you overload cellular telephone systems pretty quickly. Unlike cellular telephone sites, land mobile radio sites are built to the highest standard of reliability, so they're engineered specifically to deal with the kinds of things like wind and ice that can oftentimes take down other kinds of private or broadcast facilities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item?
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Beecham. I live at 3024 Stratford Avenue. I'm just going to add a couple comments to what Director Cassidy said. I was one of the citizens on the Mayor's Safety Committee. We really had a very diverse group of folks that came together for this. Some business folks, some community representatives, some parents, some grandparents, and we really, I don't think, came into this committee with any sort of preconceived idea about what our determination was going to be. We took a look at the firehouse issue and the public safety radio issue and talked about if they were both important enough to go forward. And after doing our due diligence and really looking at the issue, we felt that both were indeed very important to Lincoln. So then we addressed what did we think would be the best match for the community in terms of financing it. And I think Councilman Camp mentioned we had a big old spreadsheet, and we had, I think, 7 or 8 options on there. We took a look at bonds, but because of the way that the cost of this doesn't have to be paid up front, that we can sort of pay in different chunks, we were reluctant to have to pay interest on something like that if it wasn't necessary. We looked at property taxes, but again, because these services are offered to everyone in the city limits, whether they're a resident or property owner or not, we really felt like the sales tax provided us the best opportunity to share the cost among everyone who might use the system. Excuse me. And then we looked at the different options for the sales tax, how much it should be, and we really felt that we wanted to go conservatively and recommend the 3-year sales tax, quarter-cent sales tax, as opposed to, say, a 4-year, because even with conservative projections, we thought we could get it paid for in 3 years. So that was the recommendation that we made as a committee. I learned a lot on this committee. I understand now why the 4-minute is so important. In addition to brain death beginning to occur after 4 minutes, I believe Director Cassidy also let us know that a fire doubles in size every 4 minutes, which is why that 4-minute boundary is so important. I'm on the Planning Commission, and I know that you are all aware that our city is going to grow, and our planning department is working hard to make sure we have thoughtful growth, and I believe that having these kinds of services are absolutely vital to the growth and health of our community. On a personal note, I would, my mom couldn't be with me today, she had a doctor's appointment, but a few years ago, my mom moved to Lincoln to retire. I will admit, I'm the one who dragged her here, and she loves it here. But I think, like many retirees who live in our community, her goal is to live in her home, to age in her home, and to keep her independence as long as possible. And I believe that a strong fire and safety emergency department is really a help to that. 6 months ago, she had a fall. She was upstairs in her house. She had a fall. She couldn't walk. And we were very lucky. I just live a couple blocks away. She lives close enough that Our emergency personnel were there, I think, 15 seconds after I was, and I was only 2 blocks away. And it was not life-threatening, but there are a lot of emergency calls in the community that are life-threatening. And I think it's really to our benefit as a community to make sure, if at all possible, that we locate our fire departments in such a way that we can efficiently get to as many citizens as we can within that time frame. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item, please come forward.
Explain to me again, because I'm coming, we had a neighborhood association
You
meeting.
have to identify yourself,
I
please.
will, just a minute.
That's where we start.
All right.
Thank
Terry
you.
Pope Gonzalez, founder of the Neighborhood Association. It's called Salt Creek Area Neighborhood Association in memory of Joe and Scout Gonzalez. We put Psalms 91, reminds us to behave, 402-499-5716. Now, how much time do I have?
5 minutes.
Okay. Terry Pope Gonzalez, Pope-Gonzalez, 349 South First Street. Now, it was a nice presentation. He was the chief of police when I had to see him. So, and he's Pallone. Pallone means bald. Cassidy, it was a very nice presentation. I don't do any of that stuff, so I'm going to talk. Take my glasses off so I don't have to see you guys, because you upset me, especially you, when you do your secrets. So I don't like that. I don't like you rolling your eyes. I don't like you telling your secrets. I had 65 angry people at my home on Friday, and not even about this. You know what it was about? January 21st, Maurice Taylor died. He's the one that I had to come in front of you on October 8th. He got run over on West O. That the police department couldn't even take the time. I had to call 3 separate times to get somebody to listen. First time I used the taco truck's phone. I didn't even have my phone with me. Half the time I don't know where my phone is. Had to tell them, the street lights are out on West O. Get some, you've got 8 cop cars here. Why isn't somebody seeing? Street lights were out from Harris Bridge to McDonald's, but that old man got run over. You know why? Because the contractors didn't have the lights on. Oh, guess what? I get home, I call on my emergency phone to get the case number. I want to know the case number from the police department, 402-441-6000. You know what he does? He hangs up on me. I got to call back. I got to ask for a supervisor. You know what I say? That punk just hung up on me. This is a police department. Thank God I wasn't dialing 911. Now, my fire department, they know me. They know my address. See, when I was in kindergarten, look how old I am. It was a long time ago. Don't even remember her name. Denver, Colorado, 3 blocks from Mile High Stadium. She took each and every one of us up to the fire department to make sure we knew to take care of the firemen. Because you want the person running into the fire to know where you are, not the one running out. I don't think that we need to do that 911 thing. Poor people don't get to. Guess what? We got to suck it up. And yeah, I live over in something you guys all call the bottom, so I ain't the bottom of anything. It's the South Bottoms. It's a historic district. Guess what? Harry Rank, Purple Heart recipient, 1st Cavalry Medevac, Vietnam. He couldn't even get emergency equipment to him because of the trains. Nobody bothered to even put an overpass in for him. He's dead now, December 17th. Now the fire department, even the police officers on the street know who Harry Rank is, because somebody can't get there to help him. They got to send trucks from Coddington because the trains are there. But oh yeah, let's let the poor people pay some more taxes. And I appreciate you. See, I've been the token on a board before. The good old boys, they really don't want you here. They just know you play better than they do, and they need you. I've been the token. So I appreciate your remarks, and I don't mean to just be disrespectful in any way. And honey, I can't even see you, so I don't know if you're laughing or not, okay? This is not meant to be funny. This is meant to say the poor people are sick and tired of taking care of the rich people. Out of 65 people, because we're doing numbers, only 5 have ever had to have anybody even call 911 or the 441-6000, because they call me. Half the time I take care of it myself because I don't want to fight. What the mayor sent that letter to me saying that I have to go through the ombudsman office. Ombudsman people aren't even there on the weekends or at 3 o'clock in the morning when we're having problems. Last time I had to call, we're smelling anhydrous. You know what that means? That means a meth head is cooking something. And it's probably that contractor. They send me a sergeant because we know Terry gonna fight. Because this dog will fight. This dog will bite. So when he comes, he dealt with me 4 or 5 years ago. Thank God I was good to him, because I'm not always good. And I wasn't always on a crutch either. So I say to him, look, I've already checked the neighborhood, I've already checked the old people, checked all the cripples, checked everybody. What you need to do, you go back and deal with them. I don't want to deal with them. You know how come I can smell anhydrous? Because I'm allergic to kerosene. So everybody understands, the man that died, that got run over October 8th, he died January 21st. Tomorrow, when I get my Social Security disability, I will be down to give him an obituary in Lincoln, Nebraska's paper. And guess what? He was a Marine. In 1974, 1975, he was a Marine. So Lincoln, Nebraska needs to be real proud of themselves. And you know what? Because I've already offended everybody, and I know I have. I am 349 South First Street. Anybody want to talk to me, come over, because I don't internet, and I don't care what any of you say. If you can't say it to my face, I got no respect for you. Thank you for your time. Oh, I'm going to leave my accountants here. I'll write with my accountant, because we know we're going to need it.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Come right on up, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is George Peters, and it's P-E-T-E-R-S, and I have a residence at 4921 Chelsea Court. And I'd like to support what you're trying to do. I wish you'd go even further with it. Back in the spring when this came up and you were talking about a bond, I did a lot of research on it. I burned Mr. Camp's phone up, I think. It's good to see you, John.
Good to see you.
And if you do the sales tax, you're not going to have to service that debt for 20 years, where you can pay for it in a couple of years. Everybody that comes to Lincoln is going to pay for it. All the university students, everybody that comes to the arena is going to pay for it. You know, nobody's going to miss a quarter of a penny. I mean, they're not going to not go to the games, or the university kids aren't going to spend money because you've added a quarter of a penny to what they're buying. You know, it's my understanding, and through my research, I found out that approximately only 42% of the residents in Lincoln pay property taxes. I don't think you can ask them to pay any more before you ask everybody that comes here to pay for this. Everybody needs the public safety. I think this should be the #1 item. I would have liked this. I understand you can go a half a penny for 10 or 12 years. I think that's where you should go. The state gave you the right to do that. It's my understanding that Lincoln runs 12.7 cops per 10,000, with a national average of 17, which means Lincoln is over 100 cops short. And I think that needs to be brought into bear. And I can give you a personal example of why I think you're so short on police force. On the night that school got out last May, my wife was in the hospital and I was watching TV, and about 11:20 my doorbell rang. And I know I wasn't asleep because I have 2 beagles that are about ready to tear the front door off. And I went to the door and there's nobody there. Well, I wasn't going to go outside, and I just, blew it off that time. But at 11:30, the doorbell rang again. Now, if I'd have been armed, I might have gone outside, and there might have been a problem. Okay? So I called 911, and I said they'd be right there. This was at 11:30. At 12:05, an officer pulled up to my front door. And when I asked him, where you been? He said, sir, I'm sorry, but there's only 4 of us working the whole south side of Lincoln, and we were busy. Well, I could have been knocked over the head, my house could have been cleaned out, and they could have been at the Superior by the time, the cops showed up. So for anybody to say there's enough cops in this town is just not true. Okay? That half a penny, if you go all the way, would provide you the opportunity to hire a lot more police officers. It would also give you the opportunity to, I think, and I believe that the fire department is doing right by having the ambulances chased around by a pickup. There's no reason in this world for a $500,000 fire truck to be chasing an ambulance. I mean, that is just ridiculous. I mean, you can put a set of bolt cutters in it, which is what got all the attention to it back in the spring, but that's what I think should be done. Okay? If you look at the news every day, and Lincoln was on Timothy McVeigh's short list of places to hit when he blew up the Oklahoma City Federal Building, okay? Our Defense Secretary, Mr. Hagel, said it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, but the terrorists are going to come to this country, okay? Are they going to go to a city that's got 12.7 or 17 cops per 10,000, or are they going to hit a city that's got 12.7 that can't defend itself? It takes 35 minutes for them to answer a call. And it's not going to happen overnight that you're going to build this police force up. And you may not have to go to 17. But I really think you need to get a lot closer than where you are. You know, these guys are overworked, probably underpaid for what they're doing. If they're doing the job that they're doing, they're not getting paid for what they're doing. And the money needs to be there. I mean, you know, but if they're taking 35 minutes to answer a call, that's ridiculous. But you have the opportunity here, my understanding that the state gave you, to raise a lot of money. And it also could be used to divert some of the other money away from other things that you could use elsewhere. Okay? And I also understand our new governor wants to cut property taxes. What's that going to do to your budget? If you look on the internet, cities in this country they're calling it fees in lieu of property taxes. And a lot of them are doing it because they're looking for other ways to raise money because they're so short. And I know that, you know, you all being politicians, you don't want to raise taxes. But I think it's in the good of the city to do this. So I don't know if that's my end of my time.
1 minute. You have a minute.
That's the end of my time.
Yeah, you have 1 minute.
You know, like I said, I know that Mr. Camp and I burned his phone up, and I talked to Mr. Cassidy also about it. And I really think that you guys need to get out and sell this to the taxpayers before you ask them to pay any more money. That everybody comes here to Lincoln, you know, and I think the county and the university and everybody else should have to buy in the new communication system. I don't think it should be something that the city buys and rents some space on it. I think that they should have to pay for part of it if they're going to use it, you know. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anybody who'd like, John, Mr. Peters? John would like to speak to you. John, Mr. Peters? John would like to speak to you.
Well, I was just going to make a comment, and I appreciate all the conversations we've had because you created a thirst for some of the solution that came about. You mentioned about getting out and selling this. And I just want to mention that from the city's perspective, we're not allowed to go out as officials and sell it, but we can provide information. So Mr. Cassidy and others will provide the information.
Okay.
So I would just encourage you and other citizens who share the concern, if you would be the spokespeople on that.
I have a son that's a first responder in Fremont. He's a fireman. And I know they're very underfinanced up there. He's supposed to have 13 other firemen 13 firemen per shift up there, and they're running 7. And they're doing overtime, and they have callbacks the next day instead of, you know, they work 24 and then they're supposed to be off 48, but they have callbacks and everything. And they're really running short, okay? And I can't see in a city like Lincoln where we have what we have here that you'd want to be short on, especially the public safety. I'm not for planting trees. I mean, you know, the roads and the sidewalks got to be fixed, but if you did this and went the whole half a cent, some of the money that's already in the budget for public safety might be able to go to fixing the roads and the sidewalks and be diverted out, and let everybody that comes to Lincoln pay for this. I mean, and pay for the safety. I'm sure you need more cops downtown with the Pinnacle Arena, you know, and that map that Mr. Cassidy had here should be 100% covered. I mean, without a doubt, there should be overkill on this, you know, so.
Any other comments? I would just mention that half the city budget is tied up in public safety, so we are aware. It's a balancing act.
I know you're really strapped on this.
I understand your point.
This is the way that cities around the country that have the opportunity are doing this in lieu of the property taxes. And if the governor cuts your property taxes,
correct.
You know, what are you going to do?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item?
Good afternoon, Chairman Emery, members of the council. My name is Kyle Fisher, here representing the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. We are at 1135 M Street. Through Director Cassidy's testimony, Kathy's testimony, several of your questions, you've addressed most of my prepared testimony, so I'll make it short today. Let me begin by saying that the Chamber of Commerce and its Board of Directors did pass a resolution of support for the action that's in front of you today to put this in front of voters in April. In addition to that, they also did in that resolution issue their support for the idea as well of using the sales tax, the increase in sales tax, to pay for the 911 upgrade. So they're in support of both putting it on the ballot for the voters and of the idea itself. I also do want to note, I don't speak for these organizations today, but I do know you have some other letters of support in front of you from some of the organizations that we've partnered with, like the Home Builders Association, the Realtors Association. Again, I'm not here speaking on their behalf, but I just wanted to call that to your attention and get it on the record. As for the Chamber Board, as business leaders in Lincoln, I think they have a stake or a large stake in having adequate public safety, maybe even better than average public safety. That is certainly a tangent to having a strong business community, having a strong economy, and they recognize this. And throughout the process, our Director of Public Safety has made it very clear that this is unavoidable. As Councilman Emery pointed out, this is unavoidable, this upgrade. It needs to take place. One of Tom's quotes is always about the smartphone in your pocket having more computing power than the radio system we have today, and that's a very stark point to make about this. So it does become, as Chairman Emery said, a matter of how to pay for it, and that's where the Chamber Board fell in favor of the sales tax idea. As been talked about, it's a very short duration of time. As a gentleman before me talked about, it's a 1/4 of a penny on each one of the transactions we do. Only 3 years, very attractive. Avoids the financing costs that come with maybe a GO bond or some of the other forms, and as has also been mentioned, very equitable. We host a lot of folks in the city who also come to rely on that public safety net that we have. So for the Chamber Board and their support, the bottom line was it's necessary. Nobody likes to be put in a situation where somebody's telling you it's unavoidable, you have to raise these taxes, you have to incur this cost. Nobody likes that, whether you're a business leader or one of the citizens in our audience. But being unavoidable, what's the best way to do it? We think this makes the most fiscal sense. We're going to urge our membership to support it. We urge you to support it, and we'll do our part to help it pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Thanks. Anybody else?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I'm Kobe Mack, appearing on behalf of the Lincoln Independent Business Association, LIBA. We are an organization with approximately 1,300 members in Lincoln and Lancaster County. We're here to express our support for the proposed sales tax increase because we believe it represents a reasonable option to finance necessary public safety projects. LIBA's support of this proposal was not an easy decision at all. It truly affects a lot of our members. The sales tax will compound the effects of the arena occupation taxes that are already in place. This will also increase the burden on brick and mortar retailers that are struggling to compete with internet businesses that oftentimes are not collecting any sales tax at all. LIBA's leading reservation, however, was not the sales tax itself, but the situation which necessitates it. The city has known for years that our 911 communications center would need to be replaced, yet little was done to budget for the expense. A lack of fiscal planning has created the urgency behind the need we have today. However, the past cannot be undone, and utilizing a sales tax to finance these public safety projects has many advantages over any previous proposals we've heard to date. This sales tax will not increase already burdensome property taxes. This sales tax will generate revenue from a broad base of taxpayers, including visitors to Lincoln who may also be utilizing Lincoln's emergency services. Further, the ballot language specifies that a concrete 3-year sunset be in place, and this is a pay-as-you-go approach of the sales tax, which will save well in excess of $10 million in bonding interest costs. Finally, the city has also accepted LIBA's suggestion to take steps to address future emergency system needs, creating a separate segregated fund, the account funded by monies paid by our 911 partners like the Sheriff's Department and UNL, as we understand it, would be exclusively dedicated to pay for hardware or software upgrades of the emergency communication system. When faced with the current situation that we have today, we believe this proposal is the best option to finance a very critical need for the safety of our community. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you for your time.
I would note though that the state understood that we might need a prison, and the city or the county understood we might need a jail. Nobody has the ability to save up for a rainy day and put $27 million in a bank or in the safe somewhere for a rainy day. I wish we did, but part of that is because we are trying to keep property taxes as low as we can to make everybody happy, Kobe.
Well, and Councilman, I understand that saving money, especially when you're a government body, is very difficult to do, because when you do start doing that, then there are other temptations that come along the way, and there always seems to be one more emergency right down the road. But in this particular case, we feel a little more could have been done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs of Lincoln Government. We've just come off a statewide election for officers to lead us for the next 4 years. The promise is, and it's been loud and clear, that led to the outcome was to lower taxes, income and property taxes. No mention was made of raising sales taxes to do so. Now here we are at a public hearing, and to not lower taxes, but to ask voters to raise a sales tax. City leaders need to take a lesson from state management, and then we would not have to be here today. Indeed, the proposal to raise taxes is a tax that hits the lowest income families the hardest. Everybody knows that. Lincoln has a lower family income than the national average, so we can see where the financing of the larger part of the proposal will come from. Lincoln property tax owners and renters will already have more taxes to pay in the next year because of increased assessments in the next few months. I hope you've gotten your tax statement already. Today's mantra is that there's not enough money in city coffers to pay for the police and fire improvements. If you've known this about this long, why haven't you planned for it? City officials have spent millions to support the arena, which, by the way, would be in the red without that support, contrary to political spin. Millions have been spent from city coffers to support development in the downtown area, to which only a small portion of the population goes because of parking difficulties and the lack of desire to be in bars. I guess the portion that does go looks at the concrete jungle it has become and likes it. The city is even footing the bill to improve the looks of Cornhusker Highway entrance to the downtown, rather than assessing the surrounding businesses, as is done in the downtown to its core members. The city's largesse knows no boundaries. Tax increment financing has removed millions of dollars from the tax rolls and given wealthy developers opportunities to defray part of their costs. This leaves Lincoln taxpayers to pick up the costs of the lost revenue for 15 years or beyond. This is but a small part of the issue. In looking at the community improvement budget for 2015 and 2016, there appears to be plenty of money that could be moved around to finance this project. The project can't be built at all at once anyway, and with careful planning and concern for the taxpayer, the financing over time can be made without additional sales tax. Indeed, the budget material presented for our perusal is fuzzy. When the city cries for more funds, Lincoln residents deserve the exact accounting of the cash flow and outgo in financial detail. Finally, let me say the online survey of 1,100 participants to establish the desire for our citizens to have this tax raise is made up of a small portion of people. These committees are put people on them who are likely to have their opinion in agreement with the city. They don't go out and ask for like voter registration and pick people from that in order to do so. It looks as though the results were used to establish a criteria and then extrapolate to find a fire and police desire. I want to remind citizens that in the last vote for the city increases of taxes that passed, we were told the bonds would be used for an arena, not for an ice center or bike trails or etc. Once voters give empowerment...
Jane, time is up. You've had your 5 minutes. Thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Any questions for Jane? Okay. The voters will have the voters will have a chance to vote.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
They need to think about that taxes never go away.
This one's sunsetted if you read it. Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Okay. Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 19. This is authorizing the mayor to execute a multi-year contract with funding appropriations coming from more than one fiscal year CIP for the Northwest 48th Street, West Vine to West Adams Street roadway improvement project.
Good afternoon, Randy Hoskins from Public Works. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about this.
Carl.
It is so good to see you. This is a project that people in Air Park area of town have been waiting literally for decades for this to happen. So it really is good to see you to talk about this. So as I understand it, what we're looking at here is an agreement recognizing that this project will be in 2 different fiscal years.
Correct.
So the beginning date approximately is, and the ending date.
Okay. Yeah, we're expecting to begin this project towards the end of March of this year. Okay. It will work through until probably a winter close down next winter. In that time, we hope to have the northbound lanes all completed and traffic moved over to those. And then in 2016, we will finish the project and hopefully get it all completed.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody would like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
Next is item 20, Special Permit 1999B, application of S&B Lincoln Apartments 1 LLC to increase the height of the apartment complex sign from 6 feet to 7.5 feet at property generally located at South 33rd and Wilderness Hills Boulevard.
Copy, 5631 South 48th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm here on behalf of S&B Lincoln Apartments LLC. I'm here to correct a mistake. The sign ordinance for the CUP would require, as it exists, would require a 32 square foot sign 6 feet in height. Included in the request for a building permit were plans for a sign I'll show you. And I think if I can figure out how to run this.
It should come on automatically. It should come on automatically. There we go.
There we go. Plans for a sign, it wasn't exactly like this, were included within the plans for the project and approved. Consequently, during construction, S&B's contractor started building the sign and, in fact, got most of the sign built. That is a picture of what is existing on site. Unfortunately, this sign, the way it looks, and when it would be, another picture of it, when it would be built out with, put my finger on, the 2 A's on the side plus the Aventine in the middle, ends up being 35 square feet and 7.5 feet high. Well, it's an expensive sign, as you can see from the stone and the construction. They don't want to tear down the sign to have it in place. And if you know, where we're talking about is at 33rd south of Pine Lake. And the area, the apartment complex is called Aventine. And it's 128 units, I think. But the scope of the Aventine apartment complex is pretty huge. The buildings are, the whole thing. What we're asking is to amend the CUP to accommodate the sign as constructed and as it will be constructed at 7.5 feet high and 35 square feet. And that's the ask. Small potatoes to what you've heard so far today, but we appreciate it.
Anybody would like to speak to this item? Thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? It is worth noting it was approved by the Planning Commission 9-0. Next item, please.
Next would be item 21, amending an interlocal cooperation agreement between the city and the governing boards of public safety answering points in the counties of Cass, Fillmore, Gage, Jefferson, Johnson, Lancaster, Nemaha, Odo, Pawnee, Richardson, Saline, Seward, Thayer, and York to accept the Southeast Region 911 Emergency Communication Study Agreement Addendum.
Tom Cassidy, Director of Public Safety, and with me is Julie Ryder, our Communications Manager down in the Emergency Communications Center. A while back, we entered into an agreement with 14 other jurisdictions and 13 counties here in southeast Nebraska to study the feasibility of joining forces in our telephone systems, 911 telephone systems. This is entirely different from the radio system and much less expensive, and yes, we have been saving money for it. The telephone system has to be replaced every few years. Telephone systems for 911 centers are obviously big IT projects, computers and switches and routers and all that kind of gear. And they don't last very long because the technology in telephony and 911 services changes rather rapidly. So every few years, we're all in the same boat of needing to replace telephone systems. And because of the way technology has changed, it no longer has to be physically located in the same spot. So we've all been discussing this and decided it would be wise to see if we could combine our resources and basically get a better deal together than each of us would get separately. And this interlocal was approved by you previously, and this new interlocal simply moves us to the next step. It allows us to evaluate proposals. It doesn't commit the city to anything yet. Just allows us to evaluate proposals coming from vendors of 911 telephone systems.
Discussion? We appreciate the fact that you are looking ahead and trying to find ways to save money.
Yeah. Julie, you might tell them a little bit about the funding source for this.
Right, this would be, eventually we'll be back to you with the proposals. Right now we have a consultant who's gathering all of the information. We had 6 bidders on a potential system, which was more than we expected. Those processes are now going through an RFP review to evaluate both technical as well as costs. And we're looking at a 7-year life of project. So we're moving forward as quickly as we can, because we also have in the 911 telephone system some portions that are obsolete. But it's before, those 14 of us would have all had to pay for our own backroom equipment. And by going to 2 back rooms, it's going to save everyone a considerable amount of money.
Larry?
Aside from costs, can you speak to how it might help with redundancy?
Yeah, one of the nice things about doing this is that if we all go together and do a single system, we'll be able to house the brain at least 2 spots. So we'll have a distributed 911 telephone system, no single point of failure, and that would be operationally, that would be a big advantage that we would get for really no additional cost. We think this will be quite a bit less expensive than had we gone out and issued our own proposal for a Lincoln-only 911 phone system.
And we don't have that redundancy today.
We do not. In fact, we've had a couple of occasions where we've been out of business. We cut a fiber optic line. We've had 2 floods in the basement of the county city building during the past decade, and that basically took us offline until we could get something cobbled together to handle those incoming phone calls.
Our redundancy is our backup center, and we have plans in place so that we can be active there within 15 to 20 minutes, but it's not true 911 there. We're running off a caller ID like you'd have at home. So.
All right, thank you.
Hey, John?
You briefly talked about that this is different than the 911 sales tax we're talking about. Could you maybe elaborate just a little bit more, because I can anticipate constituents are going to hear 911 radio here, 911 here, and just so we understand the distinction between the two and maybe where there is some overlap or what have you.
Yeah, the radio system is just that. It's a radio system that broadcasts over the air, and that's how our dispatchers talk to our police officers and firefighters, and our firefighters talk to one another and back to the dispatcher, and ditto with the police. The telephone system is just that. This is the 911 telephone system. When you dial 911, we know what subscriber that phone call is coming from. We know the approximate location if it's a wireless telephone call. It plots on a map on a computer monitor at the workstation. We extract that information, the number and the location, to populate our computer-aided dispatch software. The 911 system has a variety of software and hardware mechanisms for routing 911 phone calls. For example, in the event that you have inadequate trunk lines during something like a major incident that results in hundreds and hundreds of calls. So it's all computer controlled, and it is the telephony part of 911 services. So your 911 system is made up of the dispatchers, the software that they use, the telephone system that they use, and finally the radio system. So this is the telephone portion of the rather complex set of personnel and equipment and facilities that compose 911. The good news is the Public Safety Commission collects a wireless line surcharge, and we also collect a surcharge on landlines here in Lincoln, and that money is dedicated to improving 911 services. So we do have a funding stream that hopefully pays for all the costs of upgrading our radio systems. I'm sorry, our telephone systems. Even I get confused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
Next, I'll call item 22, Comp Plan Conformance 14025, approving an amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to add the Swanson-Russell redevelopment project for the redevelopment of property generally located at 1202 P Street.
Good afternoon. I'm Dallas McGee with the city's Urban Development Department. This item is an amendment to the existing Lincoln Center plan to create a project area for a redevelopment project, the Swanson-Russell redevelopment project. The map that I brought shows the boundaries of that project. It's everything within the blue area as identified. It's basically the Swanson-Russell building and property and the surrounding street and alley right-of-way. Swanson Russell began in Lincoln about 50 years ago, over 50 years ago, and they've steadily grown to a current employment of 140 employees. They plan to continue to grow, and they have looked at a number of options on how to accommodate that growth. After doing that analysis, they have decided they would like to continue to be located in downtown Lincoln and brought a proposal to us to accommodate that growth. This shows the building that they are proposing. The existing building that they are occupying today is on the right side of the photograph. The new building that would connect to this building would be 3 stories and is on the left side of the photograph, occupying what is today the parking lot that they use. This plan amendment will create the project area that will be used to generate tax increment financing for the redevelopment. This is the first of 2 public hearings that will be before you. The second one, we're hoping to come back to you in probably 3 or 4 weeks with a redevelopment agreement. That agreement will identify in detail the scope of the project, the use of TIF, and the development requirements of the developer. These plans were taken to the Planning Commission and approved unanimously. They were also taken to the Urban Design Committee, who reviewed them and found them to not only meet but to exceed the design standards, the downtown design standards. There are representatives of Swanson Russell here today, and they would be happy to answer any questions you have. But if you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer those at this point.
Carl. When I read about this, I was curious about what you would do with the loss of parking, but looking at the photograph, it doesn't appear like there may be loss of parking. What?
Actually, there's very little loss of parking because the parking will be accommodated underneath the new building. So the parking that will exist after the building is built will be almost identical to the parking that exists today.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Questions? Next item, please.
Going to our public hearing ordinance's second reading. Item 23 is repealing ordinance 19940, creating paving district 2633 in Northwest Nance Street from Northwest 8th to Northwest 9th Streets due to the lack of a petition signed by a majority of affected property owners.
Public Works Engineering Services, repealing the ordinance that created paving district number 2633, which is in West Nance from Northwest 8th to Northwest 9th. Just a quick review, when it comes to paving districts, we require over 50% of the benefited property owners to be in agreements with the district before it's built, which is a little different than our sewer and water. We give them 1 year to get that majority. 2 reasons that we go for a year. After that, the price estimates that we give start getting a little fuzzy. And also, if it's more than a year, we've had complaints about real estate. People are reluctant to buy or sell if they think that there's a special assessment hanging over them. Open to any questions that you might have.
Carl, thank you. Ms. Philippi, we've been in meetings together, so I know a little bit about the hurdles, I guess, that we encountered here. Could you talk just a little bit about specifically why we didn't get to the finish line with this paving district?
In this particular case, the individual that requested the district actually lives on the street, and the people who were in agreement with the district also lived on the street and were concerned with the dust and different fast traffic and what have you. The individuals that did not vote in favor of them happened to be landlords. One actually lives out of state, which does make it hard because a landlord perhaps doesn't see the full benefit of what a paving district or sewer or water can do for their renters.
Okay, thanks. And correct me if I'm wrong, but most of these areas that have unpaved roads are lower income,
Correct.
lower valued housing areas, and probably similarly situated where you've got a lot of rental properties, maybe absentee landlords.
Exactly. And in the past, we were able to get grants, federal grants that have disappeared. So when it comes to a paving district, the benefited property owners shared the whole cost between them. When it comes to sewer and water, we're able to subsidize a little bit. So paving is a tough one to get through.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
Next is item 24, authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $375 million City of Lincoln, Nebraska Lincoln Electric System revenue and refunding bonds.
Good afternoon. Laura Kapuska, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at Lincoln Electric System. And didn't think I'd be back here so soon after just getting our budget approved, but we've had some positive movement in interest rates, and so we've got some opportunities now to refund some bonds that we previously issued. Specifically, this ordinance allows us the ability to refund our 2007 and our 2012 bonds, and it also provides enough authority to meet any new money needs that we might need in 2015 and 2016. Currently, though, only our 2007 bonds are really candidates for refunding. We're looking at being able to save about $9 million on a net present value basis, about 9% we'd be saving. So in order to move ahead with these bonds, we need both our board approval as well as city council approval. And our board did approve it at our meeting last month. And so now I'm here with asking you to review our 7th series ordinance. So for the way that works, we have a general bond ordinance, and then every series has its own individual ordinance. So this is our 7th under our general bond ordinance. Just a couple other points. It does extend until December of 2016, and it's a total of $375 million, and it's really to cover all of those things if we would need to issue bonds for all of those things. Although we may not be able to refund the bonds, like the 2012 bonds, before the end of next year. They may not become candidates for refunding. So, any questions? John?
Good. John.
Good to see you, Ms. Kapuska.
Thank you.
Would you break down the $375 million of what portion you anticipate would go to the 2007 bonds? And it sounds like that might be a big part, and then also having some operating funds.
Right. So the way, when I come up with the $375 million, it's kind of a little bit of an estimate, because when we refund bonds, we don't know exactly how much we're going to have to issue to replace the ones we're refunding. So I said about $100 million for the 2007 refunding. The 2012 bonds, if we're able to refund those, that's only about $50 million, is all its candidates in there. And then there's about $95 million in there for new money that we would need between 2015 and 16. And if you're adding that up, it does not get yet to 375. So then it's rounded in just in case there's something else that comes up that we're not aware of. So I don't think that we will get to 375 million.
And could you address on the $95 million in the new money, what applications you would see that being put to?
Sure. So in our 2015 budget, we identified the need for about $30 million of financing. And in our budget, we projected that we would issue commercial paper. So what this would allow us to do is, instead of issue commercial paper, instead issue long-term bonds. But as far as the $30 million for 2015, what we were looking at is just helping to fund our capital expenditures. Not one significant project, but it's things like our mobile meter reading, a number of T&D projects, some projects that are going on at our generating plants. So nothing one significant thing, but a lot of smaller projects. And that's the same thing that we would use it for in 2016.
So I guess what you're saying is this could potentially be several series of bonds that you might issue depending on what you need, or say like you've got your $100 million for the 2007 and maybe some more for current operating or capital costs.
Right. Probably the way this would play out, and it's hard because you're trying to watch what's happening in the market also. But to get our best benefit is to group these things together, because every time we issue bonds, we have to pay attorney fees and underwriter fees and all the different fees. So we want to, capture, have have the bonds cover as much as we possibly can. So chances are we would only do one refunding in 2015 and then one bond issue in 2016. Now, as soon as I say that, rates could change again, and all of a sudden we could be back in the market because the 2012 bonds may be in a place where it's worth refunding them. But traditionally, we would just have one issue a year.
So we might anticipate, say, what, 150, 200 million the first time in 2015?
I would say no more than 100, probably 180 would be the top. If we tried to go and get bonds to pay for our capital needs for 2015 and 2016, that would be probably the most we would issue this year, unless something happens with those 2012 bonds. I'm doubtful on.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
Next is item 25, text amendment 14021, amending section 2772080 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to exceptions to front yard requirements to provide for a reduced commercial front yard setback in the O1 office district and the B3 commercial district where there is an abutting residential district along the same block face.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, Derek Zimmerman with the Baylor Evans Law Firm, 1248 O Street, Suite 600. And I'm here on behalf of the proposed developers of a project which is located on the northeast corner of 48th and Pioneers Boulevard. And as part of the project, there is the text amendment application that is before you. I'm just going to show you a few quick items about the project. I'm not trying to jump the gun too much, but I just wanted to give you an idea of why we got to where we are and working with the city staff to get to the text amendment application. So very familiar spot in Lincoln, northeast corner of 48th. We have the existing Colby Ridge, Goodrich, and Lamar's building. And this property is currently zoned B3 today. And we're looking to do a redevelopment of the area, which does take into account some properties directly to the east of this property along 48th and Pioneers. And we have this is an existing dentist office. It has since been closed. It's not operational. Building constructed sometime in the mid-70s. We do have one residential structure. It was prior to my client purchasing the property. It was a landlord owned property, leased it out, and the condition of the interior is very, very poor, and it would cost an extreme amount of money to do anything with it, and it is not economically viable to do any sort of rehab. And the application for the change of zone will be for a B3 for all of these properties, including a vacant property. And as part of that discussion, we discussed the fact that we're dealing with a relatively narrow lot, about 150 feet in depth. There we go. And in addition, there is a building line district that runs along Pioneers Boulevard, which pushes it back 7 feet. In the B3 zoning district, there actually is no front yard setback unless you are on the same block face as a residential district, and this does apply to this property. And the result would be you're pushing the property back 32 feet, and it doesn't really give a whole lot of room to work with. It didn't really fit in with the plan and the discussions we had with city staff. And many existing areas of town do have these shallow lot depths, and you're also dealing with other zoning districts that do allow for a setback reduction. Plan unit developments, special permit districts, they do allow for a reduction, but the B3 does not. So we work with the planning staff to come up with the application that's before you today, and basically for every 2 feet a commercial building is set back from the residential lot line, you're allowed to move 1 foot closer to the street. This came, as I said, as part of the whole project, and including the change of zone. There is a conditional zoning agreement which does identify some conditions to make sure that the easing from the residential area to the commercial is smooth. I do understand that there have been some discussions amongst certain council members, I believe it's Councilman Cook and Councilman Baird, to discuss a possible way to maybe incorporate some of the items identified in the zoning agreement into the text amendment. And I think that may be a better question for David Carey with the Planning Department to discuss. But I will just say that for our purposes, we are willing to work with city staff and the council members over the next week to come up with a final proposal. I think that, as long as our project, I think I've been given indications that our project itself is acceptable. It's just making sure that the months of work we've put in and making sure that that this project works with what everybody wants is acceptable. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay,
I do.
Larry.
I think at Planning Commission, Commissioner Scheer had mentioned concern about pedestrian access to this particular project. When I think about donuts and popcorn, I know who wants to go to this place. It's my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to whether or not there have been any thoughts about how to potentially improve pedestrian access, especially given the kind of people who are going to be interested in being patrons of?
I can. And there are some challenges, obviously, with this intersection. It's an interesting intersection, how 40th and Pioneers hit one another. The focus for our project, as best as we could deal with in terms of access, or at least pedestrian use, was we really focused on the customers having a patio area. And I know that's not necessarily the same as access. I understand that, but we're talking about use within this area. Other than that, we talked about just making sure the area was adequately screened. We are paving the alley along here. It's currently a gravel alley, and it's not in very good condition. But beyond that, there haven't been any discussions. I just think that we are eliminating access points along here, so you're not going to see driveways in the future. I think driveways are an impediment to pedestrian access, but that's as far as the discussions have gone.
Any other questions? Thank you. Did you look my way when you said donuts and popcorn?
She was looking at me.
No, she wasn't.
It's because you're sweet.
Yeah. Can't get this figure without popcorn and donuts. Come right on up.
Gonzalez, 349 South First Street, Lincoln, Nebraska. I've just seen this, so I don't never laid eyes on you guys, have I? But I am one of those where they put a business next to an abutting residential district, and we all know how that turned out. Now, mine was a concrete company. I would have went for the popcorn people. But your pictures, 2005. This is 2015. A lot happens in 10 years. Got any more? Got any current pictures? Your pictures are 2015?
Of the existing?
No, your pictures are 2005. They say in the corner there. Today is 2015. A lot happens in 10 years.
2010.
Oh, it says 2010?
Yeah.
Okay, well then it's 5 years.
You're right.
Okay, so a lot happens in 5 years. So I'm just asking.
Okay,
That's the most current
Do I need to?
pictures I have.
That's current picture.
Okay, like I said, a lot happens in 5 years.
I understand.
And I'm sorry, I thought the one said 2005.
Okay.
The one of the other house, the brick. Does it say 2000?
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Jonathan.
I just want to ask David Carey to come up for a second.
David Carey, Acting Planning Director.
So and we're still just on the text amendment here, and you know, I passed out a text amendment earlier, or an amendment to the text amendment that would have put in place a limit on how long this applied. But I know, as was mentioned, maybe you're still looking at the possibility of incorporating the actual design elements rather than an expiration date. And so I just want that to be, my colleagues to be aware of that, so that over the next week, if we come up with another solution that you prefer, that might be what you bring forward to us.
Yeah, just so it's clear that over the next week, we'll work on some language that we think that staff and the applicant, as well as law, can work with to make the project move forward, as well as have on the books standard included in this text change that would also apply to other applicants that would take advantage of the relief to the setback that's being proposed.
Would it be helpful to keep public hearing open for the third reading, just in case you've got some elements there that might lead to discussion?
Wouldn't bother me on, certainly on the text amendment element even. I don't know if it's needed on the other, but that makes.
Yeah, I think we'd be comfortable with that.
I'd make a motion we keep a public hearing open on this.
Just on item 25?
Correct. Or, yes.
Yeah, because the other won't be affected. I mean, whatever we do with item 25 will work for 26 and 27. That's stipulated here, so.
Second. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Oh, well, no.
Are we expecting a change further than this, though? I mean, we can, if we do get another change, we can always reopen the public hearing.
Oh. Yeah, the idea would be that we want to pass all these as a package next week. And so I guess.
Should we keep all three open then, is what you're saying?
I don't actually know that it's going to be a big deal that way, but
The intention is that it's not going to be.
Yeah, I don't see it being, the whole point is to come up with an amendment, either like this, that's simple, or one that includes some elements, but those elements are all well-known since they're part of this project, so I don't know that it's.
I just don't want to have further delays because you start to reopen.
No, that's
giving
the,
people
we
notice.
wouldn't, that's what we're aiming toward, no delay. So if you want to have the
If I
option
would
for
say,
additional
why don't we
public
do
hearing.
the three then, since we're a package, even though we haven't talked the other, if that's all right with my second.
I'm fine with it, just.
I doubt we're going to have anything, but at least we've
If
observed the timeline.
It's open and it's available if we need it.
Sure,
Okay.
so you're saying your motion is now items 25 through 27, just to continue public hearing with action?
Yes.
Next week.
That's correct.
I'll second that.
We have a second, so we're good.
Oh, okay. Well,
Discussion before we call the roll? Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Next item, please.
Next, I'll call items 26 and 27. They're approving a development and conditional zoning agreement between the city and Ironwood Properties LLC and Stefan Construction Specialists Incorporated to restrict use of the property under the proposed change of zone 14029 on property generally located at the northeast corner of South 48th and Pioneers Boulevard, and change of zone 14029 application of Ironwood Properties and Stefan Construction Specialists for a change of zone from O2 Suburban Office District to B3 Commercial on property generally located at South 48th and Pioneers Boulevard.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, Derek Zimmerman for the proposed change of zone. As it sits today, this is the existing Goodrich, Colby Ridge Lamar's property. It is zone B3. The application addresses, for the change of zone, and the zoning agreement also addresses these three properties, which are currently zoned O2, and then residential along here. To the north, you do have some B zoning, and then I believe R4 starts, I believe it may start here or here. With the zoning agreement, we are looking to do a few items, and I'll just point out a few of the larger ones. We are doing a 6-foot landscaping screen for the parking lot along here. In addition, we are agreeing to street trees along Pioneers Boulevard, 4 of them, one along 48th Street. And there is going to be a landscaping buffer in between the residential property, which is located here, along the entire property. It's a 10-foot area that we are dedicating to landscaping, with the exception of a approximately 4-foot area allowing for a walkway to the front parking area to the front of this business. There are some excluded uses, no cabinet finishing materials. It's really meant to be a showroom for this property. It's going to be a cabinet showroom. Culver Ridge, Goodrich, Lamar's along this area, and then we're proposing to have a retail and office area along here. I do want to, just because it came up, there was a question about the conditions of the property. The residential structure that I showed in the text amendment application is from 2005. I will represent that the property conditions, they can change, but of the three that I showed you are very similar, if not identical today. If anything, this property is worse because of the issues that I described previously. We're eliminating access points. We are paving the alley along to the north. We're doing a lot to bring value to this area, to this property. This does come with a recommendation from the planning department. We appreciate their work on this. It does come with a unanimous recommendation from the planning commission. We did have 2 neighborhood meetings, and those who were there expressed their support for the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Zimmerman? Thank you. Anyone else that'd like to testify on this item? All right, next item.
Next, I'll call item 28, change of zone 14033, application of Casey's Retail Company, Keith and James Peterson for a change of zone from R4 residential and O2 suburban office to B3 commercial district on property generally located northwest of the intersection of South 48th and Meredith Street.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Mark Hunziker appearing on behalf of Casey's Retail Company. This is a change of zone which was previously associated with a special permit to enlarge an existing non-conforming use. That is not on your agenda because it was approved by the Planning Commission, subject to your action on the change of zone. The change of zone affects 3 lots in the block. 3 of them are already zoned B3 and occupied by an existing small Casey's retail outlet. The other 3, 2 of which are under contract to Casey's, the 2 will be included in the Casey's site plan, and the 3rd will remain residential under owner occupancy. We did have a meeting with the immediate neighbors of this project. The neighbor who owns the property next to the property, which is going to be incorporated into the Casey's site plan, came to the meeting, agreed that his property ought to be included in the change of zone, and has indicated that he is in favor of the project so long as Casey's will serve pizza at the Casey's location.
Okay, after my own heart.
The only other thing he suggested was that he thought it would be appropriate that we go ahead and complete the paving of the entire alley rather than stopping at his east property line, which was originally shown on the site plan, and we've agreed to do that. The other property owners were both on the south side of Meredith Street and to the north of the alley, both of whom were in favor of the project. There was some suggestion early in the process by the planning department that maybe it would be appropriate to include some of the property on the south side of Meredith in the change of zone application. After hearing about that proposal, the only property owner who was there, I think, declined only because he really doesn't have any immediate plans for the property and was concerned that it might raise the valuation for tax purposes. But there was no objection to the concept.
Mark, could you put the map up and show us which houses you're talking about as you are talking about them? Thank you.
Make sure I get this oriented correctly. This is 48th Street. The existing Casey's, it occupies these 3 lots. The property owned by, and I'll have his little, Sacheski, I believe is the way it's pronounced, is right here. There is another owner, James Peterson, right here. Both of those properties are under contract to Casey's. And then Mr. I think it's Bogue, who appeared at the, yes, but Bogue owns this property. And all 3 of these are included in the change of zone.
When you mentioned the alley to the east, did you mean the north?
Did I say alley to the east? I'm sorry, I meant alley to the north.
Okay.
This alley will be paved and will serve as the only access to 48th Street. There's an access about here that will be eliminated, and the access will be moved back to approximately here. So we will be improving the circulation pattern for the site. Right now, it's very, very tight to get in and out of the site, and during busy periods, it backs traffic onto 48th Street just to get in and out of the site. So we think we're going to improve the situation. We're definitely going to improve the store. I brought along, just for your information, a rendering of what the store will look like when it's completed, which we think is a great improvement over what we have there today. And I'd try to answer any questions you might have.
Jonathan.
That's a rendering and not a picture of another store? That's very good.
Well, okay. Caught me. It's a picture of another store.
All right.
But it's a picture of a store that is very similar, if not identical, to what we're going to build there.
Okay. Well, you are taking ownership then of 2 of those 3 lots to the east of the current, or west of the current
That's correct.
Casey's
Yes.
location. So there will be the 1 lot that will remain residential will continue to be owned by someone else.
Yes.
Okay. And
There will be about 50, the second lot that's being purchased by Casey's will essentially serve as delivery and parking. The building itself will be about 50 feet east of the property line of that particular owner.
okay. And okay, so the building will be 50 feet.
Yes.
Be a certain amount of activity going on next to that residential property.
There will be some. If you'd like, I did bring a site plan if you're interested. I'm sure it was included in your materials. But yes, the building itself will be about 50 feet east of the property line of the residential property.
And so the traffic that comes into that parking area will be what kind of traffic?
Primarily, I expect those to be either employees parking there or neighborhood-oriented traffic coming from the west to the store. The deliveries will be on the north side, and part of the reason we're paving that alley is to provide for the ability for trucks to come in and park along the north side of the building while making deliveries.
It's a 24-hour operation?
I don't know that it will be. I don't know that it is today, but I don't know that we certainly would not want to restrict its operation because, you know, as these things change, sometimes they go longer hours than they currently operate.
Well, it just, I'm just trying to figure out the future of the remaining residential lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's commercial, it's next to this, a certain amount of activity that could even go on late at night if there are deliveries.
Yeah, I mean,
or employees coming and going, and so it's a rental or?
No, it's owner occupied.
So it's owner occupied right now?
Yes. I think it's fair to say that the future of that lot is likely to be commercial. It is going to be abutted by commercial on the east, and by commercial on the north. And as the planning staff has indicated to the property owners on the south side of Meredith, possibly at some point in the future, commercial on the south side of Meredith as well. One of the difficulties that you have when you're dealing with older commercial areas like this is that the depth of the existing zoning is so restricted that it makes it very hard to do any sort of circulation on a site that serves a modern use. And over time, the planning department has recognized that, and they've looked at areas like this and said, you know, we would really be better off over a longer period of time, and you know, pick your number, but to have the commercial district defined by the street rather than by halfway through the block.
I see the existing zoning, though, is B3 and then O2 and then R4. Is that right?
Yes.
R02.
Mhm.
So somebody at some point must have decided that a transition zone made some sense in the middle of the block between the residential and this heavier commercial. Did you have any discussion about that last lot being O2 instead of B3? Because there are residences, you know, to the west of that.
No, this was all the idea of zoning the entire block deep was put to us by the planning department. We did not seek to rezone property we didn't control, and we didn't make the application until after we'd had the conversation with the property owner at our neighborhood meeting. Because we weren't going to go in and ask to rezone somebody's property who didn't want it rezoned. But he agreed that it made sense. The planning department agreed that it made sense. And I think, frankly, that it does make sense to make that boundary 47th Street rather than somewhere mid-block.
Can you show the map just again briefly? So north of the alley, the zoning along there, those lots between 47th and 48th, those are all, what are they?
I believe those are all,
It's partly
gone
O2.
back
It's
and
O2.
driven by it. I don't believe they're all zoned B3,
That's
but I
right.
believe they are all commercial use.
Right. So that doesn't go all the way to 47th, the R4 even, or is it? Or what is that? No. So they're not all commercial. So I guess maybe this will be a question for planning, maybe when you're done with.
Okay. I'd try to answer any questions you might have.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody who'd like to discuss this item?
I have a question. I'd like to know how long that family that doesn't want to go with
Please.
you, how long they've been there?
We got it. We have to start with the process. Introduce yourself.
Just a minute. I will.
I know, but then you don't get to ask questions from the audience. You have to come up and introduce yourself, then ask your
Okay.
question. Thank you.
All right. Terry Pope Gonzalez. Since I can't ask the audience, I'd like to know how long that person, that family, would they say, what was the name? Bouge? Is that right? Is that what he said? Because that's what I wrote. I'd like to know how long they were in the home. I'd like to know how old they are. I'd like to know how many family members they have. I'd like to know if they're going to be shoved out or killed like my father-in-law was. Because, see, we're one of those that everybody thought it was okay to change the zone. See, I knew from the jump it wasn't okay, so I didn't change the zone. So I'd like to know with this one, how long, I have 5 minutes. I'd like to know how long the people have been there, how old the family is, how many family members they have. I'd like to know why they don't want to be in agreement with this bunch. I'd like to know those questions. And I don't know this man. I thought he was Seacrest, and he said his name is Hunsinger. So I don't know anybody. So I actually thought he was Mr. Seacrest, so I'm sorry. I mean,
Somebody got insulted, and I'm not sure who it was. I don't know who it is. I didn't pick a side.
And see, half the time I can't see, so I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, could you try to supply that information, please? To the ability you can without invading some sort of lawyerly priority, I'm sure.
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that, other than the one man who showed up at the
Yeah.
neighborhood meeting who appeared to be I'm guessing in his late 50s or 60s,
Okay.
and said he had been there for quite some time. I don't know how long.
Okay. Do you have a contact number that perhaps
I can
ask him if he,
certainly
maybe you
find
can
out, sure.
exchange information and she can, if he would like to give her that information, he has that right. If you don't want to, that's your lawyerly right.
He's not my client, so I'll ask him
I
if
got
he
you.
does.
I got you. Thank you. Any other questions?
For staff.
David, please.
David Carey, Acting Planning Director.
Yeah, I'm just curious because we had the previous zoning arrangement where we had B3 and then O2 and then residential. And now we're getting rid of this buffer office zoning, which is fairly commonplace. We tried to buffer residences from the more active retail. And I see on the next block over, it's not all commercial. I'm just wondering why planning felt it was important to go all the way to 47th Street with the B3 and to not consider O2 maybe at least as a buffer at 47th Street.
Yeah, I can speak to that to some degree, and I would also ask Steve Hendrickson to come up simply because he's going to have more experience with the details of the application of those transition zones. But in general, the thinking here is that because we have a application to bring the B3 all the way to nearly that block face, with the exception of that final lot, to have that transition zone for just a single lot, again, it gets back to what Mark was explaining, which was the usability of that lot for an activity. These are small lots, and part of the reason why we need to rezone some of this for the Casey's project is to have more space for the more modern use of it to work. And so to have that zoning, an O2 zoning, for example, on one lot really still limits that area for use. I could have Steve might have some examples of how that has been used in the past as well. But that is part of the thinking, as well as the fact that we want to use the street as a significant 60-foot, give or take, buffer to the remaining residential across the street.
Part of it also was in the blocks to the north.
Steve, I'm going to make you
I'm sorry.
identify yourself, please.
Steve Hendrickson at the Planning Department.
Thank you.
Also, part of it was in the blocks to the north in College View, the business district from Cooper to Prescott and Prescott to Lowell. The commercial zoning line in those blocks is also with having the B3 go right up to 47th Street. And then to the west, we primarily also have multifamily zoning, because that's also sometimes how we have a transition as you go from commercial to not necessarily office, but to multifamily and then a single family. And that's also the case that we have here with Meredith, is that the block from 46th to 47th Street on both sides of Meredith is R5. So you have apartment zoning to the west of 47th Street, and we would be just continuing that zoning line that we already have here in College View along 47th Street.
So, and it would take, it often doesn't come up very well, unfortunately, the zoning map on here. So by the time I get to it, we'll be done with our meeting. So I just want to clarify here, if B3 goes all the way along Meredith from 47th to 48th, south of the alley. North of the alley is B3, maybe 2 lots of O2, a lot of R4, and then is it, what's the next zone, R5?
5.
Okay, so this text change that we were talking about on the previous item would apply to this B3 corner. If we rezone it at 47th and Meredith, what would have been a setback requirement would go away with that text change.
On the northeast corner of 47th and Meredith?
Yeah.
That'd be rezone B3. To the north of it is O2. So
Directly north is O2?
Yes. Directly north of...
Oh, got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So I couldn't tell where the street was. So it's O2. All right. So we basically the same kind of buffer. We had O2 at 47th Street. We had O2 mid-block and then some residential. Now you're moving the B3 all the way, but you're leaving O2 in the next block over. And you did not want to leave that, because it's one lot, and Casey's takes up the rest. So what can be done with the one lot? I guess it's a question of, is there some value in leaving O2 there or not? You said no. Does that indicate that you, in the future, will say the O2 should go away?
I think if an applicant came forward with the O2 to the north, we would look at the similar experiences both to the north and the south of it and say it may be appropriate to change to B3 as well.
Okay, well, that's good to have that idea in mind.
But to follow up on that, if it's difficult to do something with one lot, does it matter if it's B3 or O2? I mean, isn't it difficult to use that small space? Because presumably it wouldn't be part of the Casey's development. Casey's has its full, newly modernized layout with the building backing up to this lot on the east. So
B zoning just gives you a little more flexibility in terms of the kind of uses you could use for if you just have the single family house remaining, other than limiting it just to office. We've had some people who are looking at retail, and sometimes they're not looking for a lot of exposure, but they just want to have a place to set up. They maybe do more online type of services or things. So having it be zoning just gives them a broader variety of uses that they might be able to do.
Okay, and with the comments you made earlier about the R5 to the west and the R4 to the northwest, are you saying that that's considered almost like RT zoning, residential transition zoning?
I'm just saying,
You're viewing
in terms
it that
of
way?
the comprehensive plan, yes, we often talk about having commercial uses, then multifamily uses, and then single family in terms of a transition.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
All right, next I'll call items 29 through 31. They are approving the O Street and North 84th Street agreement between the State Department of Roads, the city, Cornhusker Bank, and Brem Enterprises relating to Cornhusker Bank's construction of street improvements associated with the bank's development on the northwest corner of the intersection at 84th and O Streets, and providing for the city to reimburse Cornhusker Bank for its cost to construct a southbound right turn lane on 84th Street with impact fees. Use permit 13011A, application of Brem Enterprises to amend the Westwood Park use permit to increase the floor area to exceed the maximum height and modify the parking requirements in the B2 planned neighborhood business district on property generally located at North 84th and O Street, and vacation 14013, vacating approximately 0.03 acres of Westwood Parkway right-of-way adjacent to Outlot A, Westwood Park, 4th Edition, Lincoln, Lancaster County, Nebraska.
We will give them the real Mr. Sechrist an opportunity to speak.
My name is Barry Lockard, and I'm the president of Cornhusker Bank.
He, by the way,
is
is not the real
Cornhusker
Mr.
Highway.
Sechrist.
Okay, and I want to thank Chairman and the City Council today. We also want to thank not only the city and the Planning Department as well for helping us get to this stage. Cornhusker Bank is excited to share with you our concept and our vision of moving our building a new corporate center at 84th and O Street. A little history: in 1960, Cornhusker Bank came to Lincoln from Davie, Nebraska. And since then, we've had the opportunity to watch Lincoln grow, but also, more importantly, participate in many relationships and in the growth of Lincoln. We've been at our current main bank at 11th and Cornhusker Highway for the last 35 years, and it has served us well. And so our goal, as we look forward to the growth of the Lincoln and to the impact that we can help continue to make with our relationships with our customers and our community, is to be at this corner at least for the next 35 years as well. So as you can see, we understand that this entry point into the city of Lincoln is very important. We're making a substantial investment into this area with the building. But for us, it's more than just the brick and the mortar. It's the program that's happening inside of the building, which gives us a chance to offer educational and financial services to folks around financial needs. It's an opportunity for us, as Kent will show on the second page, to include with this building.
It's on.
No, we showed the first page.
Can you flip on the overhead, please? Thank you.
Okay, maybe before we go to the second slide, we'll finish with the first slide, make sure it comes up. There we go. As I mentioned, at the corner of 84th and O, we understand the importance of the entryway for Lincoln and the investment that we're making there. Beyond the brick and the mortar, though, as I mentioned, is also on the back of this building. We're putting, as part of the program, a community room, 2,500 square foot community room to be able to share with customers and businesses and employees, to allow folks to have a place on this side of town to be able to come do strategic sessions. Also a chance for them to come and just enjoy the facility itself, to be able to use it in different ways for meetings that they may have for the neighborhood and the community at large. So we're excited to make this investment in Lincoln. We appreciate the council and the city planning department's support against this phase. Kent will cover some more of the technical information for us, and I'll be here to answer any questions that you might have from my point of view as well.
Kent Seacrest, Mark Hunziker's friend, is here to talk along with me and our dear president. We also have Debbie Brem from Brem Investments in the back of the room. She's available for any questions. John Dittman, chair of Cornhusker Bank, and Brad Marshall with Olson and Associates if you have any detailed questions. There's 3 agenda items that have been called. One is a use permit amendment that's going to increase 27,000 square feet total that it's allowed in this area to accommodate the bank building and a drive-through restaurant that is proposed. And the second, along with that, comes a height waiver and a parking lot waiver. Basically, the height would allow us to go to 65 feet to accommodate this good-looking building. Its height, as well as parking, where we're doing a 10% reduction on 2 of the lots because of the multi-purpose. We can share parking and not overbuild parking in the city. The other issue is that's in front of you is a vacation of a street. Westwood Parkway. The city, for whatever reason, we didn't build the street on the center line. So what we're doing here is we're vacating because the city overbuilt the street this direction, so there's excess space. But in this area, the city didn't build it right again, so we're going to dedicate that right of way to the city as part of the use permit. So we end up actually dedicating more land than we're asking you to vacate. But I think everybody's on board with that fair recommendation to go forward. The third item is we have in front of you an agreement with the state of Nebraska and the city and ourselves to build some very important right turn lanes in O Street and on North 84th Street. This is a right turn that is southbound to westbound. 84th and O is not the friendliest intersection, and we're real excited to be able to accommodate this. It's an impact fee facility. Our impact fees will help pay for this right turn lane. And then we're going to get rid of what I call kind of an access road on the O Street side. It's pretty unusual. We're able to clean that up, get rid of that, and build 2 right turn lanes. And again, unfortunately, those are not impact fees, so the bank is being asked to fund those and has agreed to fund those as we go forward. So those are the agreements that are in front of you. We had a neighborhood meeting, invited 12 neighbors. 1 showed up, did not have any concerns. We then later heard from Kohl's. They had a bunch of good questions. We gave them, I think, a bunch of good answers, and they then sent us a wish you well in your project report, so we solved their concerns, I believe. Planning staff is recommending approval. Planning Commission 9-0 unanimously recommends approval. And because 1 is an ordinance and 2 is a resolution, the whole package will be held over 1 week, so you don't vote on this package until next week. Finally, we just want to thank Paul Barnes and Steve Hendrickson for an extraordinary amount of work to work this out. Randy Hoskins was very important, Bob Simmering, and Terry Cathy from Building and Safety. Good governmental services on this one. And so with that, Barry and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Are there questions? Well, I would say 2 things. Number 1, the building is very attractive and will be a very nice draw out to what is a very important corner for Northeast Lincoln, and also a very important corner as we move farther out. The city moves farther out. 84th will soon be the 70th Street of days gone by, so that's important. Secondly, the number 1 complaint I get from people who travel 84th Street is, can you please put in a right turn lane to get us, if we're going north to south, can you turn in a right turn lane onto O Street? And I'm sure I'm not the only one who hears it. So, yippee, thank you very much. We're glad you put that in, and thank you for coming out and being part of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Jonathan.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful building. Just wondering what the timeline is, when it'll be completed, and
Great question. Our goal is to break ground this spring, more than likely in April, weather permitting, and then hopefully that's about a 15-month process. So I would say summer of 2016.
okay, thank you.
Also, this gives us a chance, Debbie, to say we're sorry about the loss of your father and what an icon he was to Lincoln. So thank you for that. Next item, please. Staff questions? I guess we have enough. Next item. Thank you.
That concludes our public hearing portion. We can move into the voting session. The report of new and pending claims against the city for the period of January 1st through the 15th, 2015, introduced by Cook.
Second by Roy. Discussion. Call a roll.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 16 is the amendment to the 2014-2020 CIP to move projects into the first year of the CIP and to change the funding source to local option sales tax for public safety projects, introduced by Cook.
So moved?
Second by Roy. Discussion. Call a roll.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 17 is the interlocal agreement between the city and county relating to the joint planning and financing of a replacement emergency communication system, introduced by Cook.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call a roll.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 18, directing submittal to the qualified electors of the city a proposed ballot question for the April 7th, 2015 primary election to increase the local sales tax rate by 1/4% for a 3-year period to be used for the city's public safety communication system, including 911, public safety radio communication system equipment and infrastructure, replacements and upgrades, a joint police, fire, and rescue station, and 3 fire and rescue stations, introduced by Cook.
So moved?
Second.
Second by Roy. Discussion. Call. I'm sorry, Larry.
I was just going to say that I think that you only really have to look at the headlines coming out of Omaha to feel somewhat fortunate that in Lincoln, when we talk about our top priority public safety needs, we are looking at a falling violent crime rate and a falling crime rate, and that we're actually talking about a radio system and the relocation of fire stations. That said, these things can be matters of life and death as well, and so making sure that we have adequate response times and that the people who protect us are protected themselves with an adequate communication system is really important. And the Citizens Committee took an in-depth look at this and recommended this method for us. I think it's in Lincoln's best interest, and I'm willing to put it before voters.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. You know, one of the things that has not mentioned that matters, I think, to both of us, hopefully all of us, is there are a couple of stations that are in North Lincoln, and there are no hospitals in North Lincoln. So to have stations that are responsive and available to all the residents of North Lincoln is vitally important to those areas that have farther to travel to get to medical care.
Any other questions? Roy?
I'd like to say that I agree with my colleagues. It's an important issue to put before the people. I'd encourage the residents of Lincoln to study this issue, to consider it carefully, and to vote. And I'm going to vote for this.
Anybody else? Well, certainly one of the keys to us moving south and east as we talk about development is that we have some sort of coverage. This is going to give us an opportunity to do that, in addition to the fact that at the end of 2017, we will have no support for the 911 system. So we have to do something. This, after a lot of people looked at that, this seems like the most reasonable way to get this done with the least amount of subsidy costs to the public in bond costs and some of those kinds of things. So I would agree with Roy. Study it, and please come out and vote. Call it.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 19 is authorizing the mayor to execute a multi-year contract with funding appropriations coming from more than one fiscal year CIP for the Northwest 48th Street from West Vine to West Adams Street roadway improvement project, introduced by Cook.
So moved.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion?
Let's go.
I know Councilman Eskridge and others are anxious for this to get started, so call the roll, please.
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 20 is special permit 1999B, application of S&B Lincoln Apartments 1 LLC to increase the height of the apartment complex sign from 6 feet to 7.5 feet at property generally located at South 33rd and Wilderness Hills Boulevard, introduced by Cook.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? I guess one of the things I'd like to say is there's always, there's discussion a lot of times about inflexibility, how developers and our planning don't always work together. I think this is an absolute prime example of what happens when they do. We had an issue. Most of the sign was built. Didn't make any sense to tear it down, but to go forward and provide an exception. So I appreciate everybody who was involved in that. Call the roll, please.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 21 is amending an interlocal cooperation agreement between the city and the governing boards of the public safety answering points in the counties of Cass, Fillmore, Gage, Jefferson, Johnson, Lancaster, Nemaha, Odo, Pawnee, Richardson, Saline, Seward, Thayer, and York to accept the Southeast Region 911 Emergency Communication Study Agreement Addendum, introduced by Cook.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Call the roll.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook? Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 22, Comp Plan Conformance 14025, approving an amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to add the Swanson Russell redevelopment project for the redevelopment of property generally located at 1202 P Street, introduced by Cook.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery. Motion carried, 7-0. Public hearing ordinances second reading were items 23 through 31. Ordinances third reading, item 32, approving a real estate sales agreement between the city and Fortunato Sanchez, authorizing the sale of city-owned surplus property generally located at 344 North 27th Street, introduced by Christensen.
So moved. Second.
Second by Trent. Discussion? Jonathan?
Well, I think that this is a better approach than where we were originally, which was leasing it for a very little money and yet putting enormous investment in it. The truth is, we would never have had a return that would have paid off that investment. This, on the other hand, gets it into the private sector. A business can locate here, and it's no longer our responsibility to maintain, and I think it's really not our job to be in the business of managing real estate like this. And I want to thank Councilwoman Gaylor Baird for her efforts on this, because I know she met with the Urban Development Department with Dave Landis and went over the process here and what we should do, and to try to come up with a better approach to these sales. And I think that this is evidence that better approach is a good one.
Okay, thank you. Carl?
Thank you. If I have my figures right, the sale of this property is for $5,000, and it cost the city $85,000 or thereabouts. So this is a rare winner for the city, where we're actually making more money than it cost us, which helps with other projects that don't fare that way. And the project, as I understand it, that's proposed here is a restaurant, and it's a restaurant that has several other locations in the community that are doing well and will be a great addition to the neighborhood.
I appreciate this project. I'm real happy to see it develop over the time. I would like to correct the figures. The city does have 180,000 in this, and we're selling for 140. There was I have a 9,000 figure, 21,000. One of those was demolished, and then 150,000 construction costs is what we were told.
Sure you aren't looking at.
I think you're on the next item.
You're next.
Yeah.
I am sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm sorry. I didn't have it on this one. Okay.
But I think we are selling this for $98,000. I think that's.
Okay.
I mean,
Thank
I
you.
think.
I apologize.
Oh, right.
You really have the public confused. Let's call the vote.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next is 33, approving a real estate sales agreement between the city and Win-Win and Tan Lam, authorizing the sale of city-owned surplus property generally located at 1739 North 28th Street. Introduced by Christensen.
So moved. Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion. John.
Well, and I'd just like to
Reiterate.
No, I don't. I'm not going to say the figures. I'm just. This is a good example where we were able to handle all of this, and yes, there's a write down by the city, but it's not what we've unfortunately experienced in some others. And so I think that urban development and others that have worked forward on this is a real good arrangement, and I'm proud of what the city's doing here, and as well as the Win-Win and the others.
Anybody else? Well, thanks, John. I'm one of those people who believes that synergy in a neighborhood is really important. If you don't think so, then look at what's happened around the NeighborWorks project. Look what's happened around the city impact property at 33rd and between Holdridge and Vine. And look at what happened with the row housing as you go down Vine Street, and how many other houses in the neighborhood have fixed their houses up appropriately. And I think this is a prime case where this will benefit this neighborhood in a long run, and you're going to see some growth around this house. So call the roll, please.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Teresa, before we sign off here, we have one more item. We're going to go ahead, Trent.
I'm going to move that we remove item 39 from our agenda as my duty on.
You wish to withdraw it altogether.
Withdraw it altogether.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trent, you want to explain why we're doing that?
Well, we don't have land to lease anymore.
Correct.
We just sold it.
We just saw it. Very good. Call the roll, please.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Very good.
Resolutions on first reading, there are none. Ordinances on first reading are items 34 through 36. And our pending list are items 37 through 39.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for adjournment.
Second.
Discussion will be that, again, we will meet next week, but then the following week we were off for President's Day. So call the roll, please.
Who seconded?
Seconded by
Fellers.
Trent.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook? Emery?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
We are adjourned.